There's a great graphic novel series called Headlocked. Talks about a coming of age story about a young man that is trying to become a professional wrestler, and the creator of that joins me now on the Vaqueros Cafe and Cantina hotline. He is Michael Kingston, and we're going to talk a little about that and about his new series called Tales from the Road. Michael, how are you, man?
I'm doing real good. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for joining us. Let me ask. I would suspect you are a wrestling fan. How did your wrestling fandom come about?
I'm going to date myself a little bit, I guess, but when I was 8 years old, the very first Saturday Night's Main Event was on, and I was flipping channels, and I fate would have it, I flipped the channel right when George the Animal Steel was on, and as an 8-year-old kid, I'd never seen anything like that at all, and I could not look away. And I've been watching wrestling probably every day of my life since.
Okay. Now, did you try to get a green tongue when you were a kid?
just when I had some popsicles, I guess.
But okay. All right, fair enough. Now, did you watch primarily WWE, WWF at the time, or were you also watching like NWA, anything like that?
When I started, like probably maybe for the first, I don't know, 6 months or so, I was just learning about wrestling. So I had just watched WWE, and then I remember one day, again, sort of flipping channels, and there's the Rock and Roll Express and the Russians on, and the match went almost the whole show on TBS, and like I couldn't believe it. I was like, oh, this is so cool. Like, I mean, it was a whole different vibe, obviously being a studio show versus being a show from an arena, but I dug it. And then as I got older, AWA and World Class would be on when I got home from school, and ESPN right at that time frame. And by then I'm reading wrestling magazines. I mean, by '86, I was a regular reader of PWI and just sort of immersed into it. And I think by the time I got to high school, then you discovered the Observer and the Torch and all that. So, and then I'm just in it.
Yeah, I tell you what, the Rock and Roll Express and the Koloffs, that was one of the big rivalries back in the Crockett days and in the NWA, them trading the World Tag Team titles, and yeah, those matches were just absolutely epic between those four individuals, with Ivan and Nikita on one side, and you got Ricky and Robert on the other side. So let's fast forward. What got you started doing graphic novels?
So, I love comic books almost as long as I've loved wrestling. And, I would buy any wrestling comics that ever came out, but they just weren't very good. They were stuff that people would license. There's some licensed WWE stuff. There's some licensed WCW stuff. But it all kind of felt like it was made to make money and not necessarily made, for wrestling fans or even by wrestling fans. It just didn't do anything for me. So I always thought, everybody I know likes wrestling, likes comics too. So, this should be a thing that we have. So I put a pitch plan together, and I'm a writer, obviously not a artist. So I wrote up a business plan, I wrote a pitch, a couple sample scripts, and I went to Comic-Con and I started talking to editors, and I was laughed right out of the room. Like literally, I mean, in one instance, somebody laughed directly in my face.
Wow.
Sometimes you don't ever, things like that you don't ever forget, But yeah, I mean, there was no place, people had convinced themselves. I mean, everybody gets into a bubble sometimes, and you see it in wrestling too, when you see certain people have a very narrow view of what wrestling is, and there are people in comics that had a very narrow view of what comics were, and primarily superheroes, or at least genre stuff. Headlocked is a straight drama. It's a reality-based story. And so they just, nobody thought anybody would ever read it. So I made it myself. I worked 2 jobs for almost a year to pay for my first print run and some convention tables. And, I would sell my book out of my backpack at Ring of Honor shows. I put I'm sitting here in the message board, and people would come find me, and I'd sell them a book and Ring of Honor eventually let me sell my books at their table. They bought ads on my stuff. Shikara also, some of the indie places were really, really nice and helpful to me. And then we just started growing. Wrestlers who were fans of comics would find me at conventions and buy my books, and then it just kind of spiraled from there. And then once Kickstarter became a thing, like it really let us sort of bring it to the people, so to speak. And we're in the process of kickstarting our 6th graphic novel, so it's been a real great journey. I've collaborated with probably 40 different wrestlers at this point. Jerry the King Lawler does all my covers. I mean, as a guy who just wanted to make a cool wrestling comic, like never in my wildest dreams would I ever have thought that I'd be doing what I'm doing now.
Right. Oh man. I mean, it sounds fantastic. You've done over 20 chapters of Headlocked, and you've got, according to the Kickstarter website, you've got next 5 are in production, or
yes. Yep.
Okay.
They're wild too. I mean, for people that have followed the series, this next set is gonna take the series in a place that I don't think my artist was reading the scripts a couple weeks ago, and he was like, he was surprised too, the direction that we took it. But the people that have read it love it, so it's gonna be a lot of fun.
So let's fast forward again a little bit to what led you to do this Tales from the Road series. Because I mean, we know that Tales from the Road, there's been some books about it, a few here and there, and they're always good, they're always enjoyable. But what led you to try to adapt a Tales from the Road type of series into graphic novels?
So ours is a little different than what people would think about, traditional Tales from the Road. But ours are just short comic book stories. They're all fictional. Some of them are based off of true stories. For instance, in the book that we're kickstarting now, the story of John Morrison is based on a very real audition that he had. We have a character in the main Headlock book who had sort of flamed out of Hollywood and then was getting back into wrestling, and so this was we turned it into a moment for him. And some of them are just out there. In the first volume we did a story with Gangrel about a guy that trains Bigfoot to wrestle. It can be anything. I mean, the thing that's the best thing is that wrestlers are all storytellers. They're telling stories in the ring, they're telling stories, and there's stories of the connective tissue that hold their matches together. They're telling stories in the car on the way to the show. I mean, just whenever you're around wrestlers, that's all they do, is they just sit around and tell stories. And so, as I started moving along, a lot of the guys, like I said, the guys that like comic books would buy my stuff. Hurricane, Rob Van Dam, Christopher Daniels, some of the hardcore comic guys would see me at Comic Cons, and then people like, oh man, I always wanted to write a comic. I always wanted to do comics. And I was like, well, maybe we could do something. And then that became sort of an incentive to get people to check out our Kickstarters. And then eventually I just had too many people that wanted to do stories. And then we just started making more of them. And I was like, man, I could just make a whole series out of this. And it's been some of the most fun that I've had. We just wrapped a story with the Inspiration. That's the longest story we've done. It's 20 pages. It's a body horror type story, and got a real Nightmare on Elm Street vibe to it. And it's super fun. I'm working on a Christmas story right now with a very unexpected guest star and a celebrity tie-in. So we get to do some really cool stuff, some really fun stuff, and it's just sitting around and kicking around ideas with some of my favorite wrestlers is like, it's a dream come true.
And now the series that you're offering on the Kickstarter website, you've got one of the covers drawn by Jerry the King Lawler, like you mentioned. And we know he is a fantastic artist. Besides being a great wrestler, Hall of Fame wrestler and a commentator, he's a fantastic artist. How did you and Lawler get connected?
So this is the craziest thing. So, I'm just, the first Headlock series I just kind of did, and it was, I learned that it was very difficult for an independent. You know what I mean? Like I'm an independent in 2 fields. It's not and unfortunately, some people are in both fields are very, brand oriented, where people say that, there's a lot of people who think that they're wrestling fans, but they're really WWE fans, and they're not going to watch anything else. And there are people who are, say they're comic book fans, but they're really superhero fans. And then, you know what I mean? They don't necessarily want to sort of push the full limit of the medium. So it's, I'm trying to think of ways to, just to get more eyeballs on what I'm doing. And in my mind, I'm like, I know Jerry Lawler is a great artist, and I mean, he's definitely professional grade, and it'd be really cool if I could get him to do a cover.
Mm-hmm.
And so I sent him an email through his website. Like, I forgot I did it after I did it. Like, it was such a like shot in the dark. Like, I did it one Saturday afternoon, didn't even think about it again. And then I get an email, and I'm like, oh wow, look at this. And it's, and he's like, send me some books and I'll take a look at it. And in my mind, I'm like, oh, this is from his webmaster or something, or some, whatever. But it was really him. And then about a week after that, calls me up on a phone. And honestly, if there was a way to fake a phone voice, I would have, in my mind, I would have thought it was a gag or somebody was messing with me or whatever. But it was really him, and he was into it, and he's done all my covers ever since, all my trades and stuff. And we do shows all over the place. I mean, he's one of my best friends now. It's, been doing this for like 10 years, and it's amazing. Like, I don't know. We get along really, really well. We like art and stuff. I've been to more art museums with Jerry Lawler than anything else, which is kind of a weird thing. Like, you don't necessarily, you see somebody on TV and that's the way that you know them. But like, to me, the Jerry Lawler I know, you know what I mean? Like, we go out to dinner and eat like ridiculous amounts of food. Like, we shouldn't be allowed to eat by ourselves because we eat so much. But we go to art museums. We talk about sports. You know what I mean? And I don't know. He's just, for a guy that's been that famous for that long, he's like the most regular dude and just the most humble, unassuming guy. And like, I don't know, we do this Comic-Con in Stockton, California, and they have a museum there that's got the largest collection of J.C. Leyendecker art. And we've done it twice now. We get to go to the museum, and they'll let us in sort of off hours and just spend hours just poring over the paintings and looking at the getting up close and looking at the brushstrokes and pulling they'll pull sketches out for us and stuff. And it's the coolest thing. And it's just funny because it's a way that it's a thing that people wouldn't expect from Jerry, I guess. You know what I mean? Because you all know him as who he is,
Right.
But I always like watching him get excited about art and about that type of stuff.
Yeah. I've had a chance to visit with him a couple times, and he and I talked football because he's a big fan of Cleveland Browns. Baker Mayfield, starting quarterback, played at Lake Travis High School here in Austin. And I do I'm a sideline reporter for the Lake Travis broadcast on the Horn. So he and I got to talk a little bit about how, what I saw from Baker at high school and all that good stuff. So it was really neat to chat with him about that and kind of learn his fandom of the Cleveland Browns.
Oh my God. Yeah. He's nuts. He's nuts about it.
He really,
it's funny because I'm a fan of the Washington football team, unfortunately. So, for a long time we could sort of commiserate on our miseries during football season.
I understand. I mean, I'm a Cowboys fan, so I got that rivalry with Washington, sure. But still, I get you. You've done one Tales from the Road. You've got another one that's on the Kickstarter. Is that correct?
Yep. We have 10 days left. And we've already passed our goal, which isn't I'm not really worried about money. Like, at this point, I just want readers. I want people, like, we make really cool stuff, but it's really hard sometimes to get bandwidth, especially now because there's so much branded content out there. I mean, you got people that have, more shirt designs than they've got matches on television. And
yeah,
it's hard, especially now with, both sides sort of pushing the us against them thing. That sort of pushes people into making sure that they give their money to their favorite billionaire, even more so. So it's tough sometimes to, sometimes I feel like, I'm like a little boy playing at the feet of giants and hoping I don't get stepped on. So, I tell you, like, I get emails all the time from people that, because I've been doing Comic-Cons for years, and that's another part of what we do you know, when I started doing conventions, like there were a lot of conventions that didn't allow wrestling, and like I opened the door for wrestling at Comic Cons at probably over a dozen shows, um, where I had to get Jerry in as an artist. They wouldn't take him as a wrestler, and then we'd show up and blow the doors off the place. And
Mm,
you know, now they
okay.
book wrestling. But you know, so I get emails all the time from people that are like, you know, I've seen your book for a while, and I just, you know, a lot of times, you know, stop and meet Jerry or the wrestlers that you have with you or whatever, and we haven't never really picked it up, and you know, oh, I got it this time, and it's amazing, and I can't believe it took me this long to check it out, and you know, I'm on board now, and like, you know, so it's sometimes it's just a war of attrition, you know what I mean? But we make really we make really cool stuff, and we put our heart and soul into it. I don't collaborate with people that, you know, I mean, I've turned down collaborations, or not turned down, but like, you know, we've tried to collaborate with people sometimes, and it's just the chemistry isn't there, and we just don't do it. You know, like I don't force stuff. We work with people that want to be there, that want to be at Comic Cons, or want to, you know, work on stories. And you know, I still work a full time job. You know, I worked a 14-hour shift yesterday and woke up, and you know, woke up directly into this interview. So, I mean, we you know, we kill ourselves to make this stuff, and it's all made out of love. You know,
Right.
I want to make it as long as I can make it, and like I've got two more series that I want to launch beyond this. We're gonna try to develop the series with Gangrel about the guy training Bigfoot to wrestle, and make that like a longer form series. And
Okay.
then in this Kickstarter, there's a story that I did with Matt Cardona and Brian Myers about wrestling figures. It's basically a Toy Story with wrestling figures, and we want to do more with that. Basically, they're sort of Stomp in Paradise action figures, are like the A team of action figures. So like when action figures get in trouble, those are the ones they call. And then it's, you know, I mean, while I was coming up with ideas for the story, I mean, they just wouldn't stop. And I was like, man, we could write this thing forever. And they
Exactly.
really liked it. And they, you know, they've had such a good time working on it, and they've had, you know, a lot of success with it. So I definitely want to do more of those. So, you know what I mean? The easier it gets for us, the more stuff we can make. So
Right.
that's
You've
all I
got
want.
you can go to Kickstarter.com. I assume just search Headlocked
Yep. Or you can
or Tales of the Road.
go to my socials. I got links up, you know, constantly on my Facebook, my Twitter, my Instagram. It's all Headlock Comic, one word.
Okay. All
Or you can
right.
go to Kickstarter.com, search Tales from the Road Volume 2.
You got some great little you got the great incentives. You got prints, you got books, you got things like a lapel pin, you got a lucha libre wristlet that you're offering, in the levels are everything, you know, from like $10 just to back you, just for the sake of backing you, all the way up to like 325 or more. So you got
And
some great,
we had higher tiers, but they're all wiped out.
they're all
You
wiped
know,
out. Okay, well,
I've
hey,
been
that's
real
good
lucky. Like
though.
one of the things that we do that I love is we do tiers where you can be drawn into the book. So
Right.
we have 4 tiers that you can be drawn on the cover,
Okay.
and we make you into a wrestler, or we make you into a character in the series. And we've been doing that since the beginning, and it's been one of our secret weapons because we get a good high dollar out of it. And like those people are now characters in our universe. And like, you know, when we make like ancillary products, like we had done a little expansion pack for Champions of the Galaxy, and some of the characters that are featured in there are people who had, you know, backed and were drawn in, like those their characters were put in there. And I
Okay.
feel like that's the coolest thing, because everything we've done has been so grassroots. So being able to help the people that helped us the most, and make cool stuff for them, and make them even more of a part of the series, is to me like super like fun. And you know, you just try my best to give back to the people that, you know, have really helped us on this journey. Like, you know, those first steps are the hardest. So, you know,
Sounds good.
getting us going, or you know.
I mean, I am impressed. He is Michael Kingston, the creator of the Headlock series. Michael, tell everybody once more how they can find you on social media, and how they can find out about Headlocked and Tales from the Road.
All of our socials are Headlocked Comic, one word. It's all run by me. So I'm also pretty active in trying to help people that are trying to break into comics, giving them advice, letting them know, like, you know, it's a weird business, and I made a lot of mistakes. I do a lot of panels with that sort of thing. So if people have questions about that, and then there's links to the Kickstarter. Um, you know, if you have any questions or whatever, you know, I'm always available to answer them or to clarify. But we make some cool stuff, and you should check it out.
Sounds great. Michael Kingston, creator of Headlocked Comics. Thank you so much.
Thank you.